and welcome back to another video. In this video, I wanted to discuss one of the biggest reasons why I believe people are unable to learn Spanish to fluency. And that, in my opinion, is this: relying too much on phrases without knowing how they truly work. Now, what do I mean by this? Well, I think I can show you what I mean with a simple example. Now, if I wanted to, in Spanish, ask what a person's name was, how would I go about it? Well, there are two common phrases that are used to do this. The first is ¿Cuál es tu nombre? Or perhaps if it's a person that I'm more unfamiliar with, to show them respect, I will say ¿Cuál es su nombre? I can also say ¿Cómo te llamas? Or again, if it's a person that I'm unfamiliar with, who I want to show respect, I can also say ¿Cómo se llama? Now, these phrases have the same meaning. However, they go about that meaning in different ways. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, first of all, let's put these phrases into the translator. This is a pretty good translator, and I would strongly recommend it to those who are learning Spanish. So, ¿Cuál? And there should be an accent there, by the way. ¿Cuál es tu nombre? And ¿Cómo? Should be an accent on the ¿Cómo, by the way, as well. ¿Cómo te llamas? There should be a question mark, like a backwards question mark in front of the sentences as well. Just wanted to point that out, but irrelevant. So these are two different sentences with the same meaning. Now let's break down each of these sentences. So the first one, ¿Cuál? ¿Cuál typically means which, right? In this context, it's better translated to what. So what? Es is a conjugation of the verb ser, to be. So in this context, it means is, conjugated to agree with a nombre. Tu is a possessive pronoun in Spanish. Tu with an accent, however, right, with an accent on top of it, on top of the you, actually just means you. But without an accent, it serves as a possessive pronoun. And then lastly, nombre, which literally means name. So this is a pretty smooth translation. What, ¿Cuál es, is, your, tu, nombre, name. Basically a one-to-one translation. However, what about this sentence here on the bottom? ¿Cómo te llamas? Well, ¿cómo means how, right? What about te llamas? Well, let's break that down. First of all, you have to recognize that llamas is a conjugation of the verb llamar, which means to call, as you can see here. However, you will notice that there's a te in front of that llamas. Now, what does that mean? Well, it means that this is a reflexive verb. So, llamar, right, typically means to call. However, it can be used reflexively. In fact, almost every verb in Spanish can be used reflexively. Almost every verb in Spanish can be used reflexively. Now, llamar and llamarse. What is the difference between these? Well, if a verb is reflexive, that means that the person performing the action and the person receiving the action are the same. What does that mean? That means that when I say llamar, I'm talking about calling another person. So if I'm talking about, I don't know, calling the bank or calling a company, calling someone on the phone, calling someone that I see outside to get their attention, that action is going to someone else. So it's not reflexive. However, if I'm talking about calling myself, that action is reflexive because it's going back to me. That is the differentiation or the distinction between a verb that is reflexive and a verb that isn't. The person who is performing the action is also the recipient of that action. Whereas if a verb is not reflexive, the action is simply being performed on another person or being performed. So, bearing that in mind, we can sort of come to a deeper understanding of what llamarse means. It means to call oneself. That is the best translation of llamarse, to call oneself. So when I'm saying ¿Cómo te llamas?, right, this verb, by the way, is conjugated in the tu form, which means you, right, an informal you, right? como te llamas, you will notice as well that the te, right, which is a reflexive pronoun, is in front of the llamas. It must agree with the verb. So bear that in mind. The te agrees with the llamas. Llamas is conjugated in the tu. The reflexive pronoun that corresponds with tu is te. So you will notice that there's a te in front of the llamas. That way, they agree with each other. Now, when I say como te llamas, I'm not literally saying what is your name. That is not a literal translation. That is not a good translation. That's wrong. What I'm actually saying is, how do you call yourself? And the meaning of that is, what is your name? Right? If I'm asking a person what they call themselves, what am I asking them? I'm asking them what their name is. And that is the distinction that you, as the learner, need to understand. Now, when people use apps like Duolingo or Babbel or Rosetta Stone or you name it, because there are thousands of them out there, they're just memorizing phrases and they're pumping them out like machines. But when they go out in the real world or when they go to Hispanic-speaking countries, they cannot speak a word. They cannot survive in the real world. They can't understand anything. They look around at the signs. They're like, what is this? ¿Qué es esto? Yo no puedo hacer nada porque yo no he aprendido nada de estas aplicaciones. Y yo no puedo hablar en el mundo real. And that's in reality what's happening to these guys. These guys cannot actually speak the language. Why? Because they're relying on phrases to get to fluency, which is never going to happen. So what was the point of this? The point of this was to show you that you need to have a deep, intimate understanding of the Spanish language. You need to understand why phrases work, not just memorize phrases from Duolingo or Babbel or Rosetta Stone or whatever. You need to actually understand why phrases work, how they work, how verbs work, how verbs are conjugated, etc. You actually have to sit down and learn the language. You cannot just do Duolingo every single day and think you're making progress. People have done Duolingo for years and they have never gotten to fluency. That's not to hate on Duolingo, but that's to show you that you need to gain a deeper, more intimate understanding of the language to be able to speak it fluently. And if you want that more deep, intimate understanding of the language, you have to go beyond just using language learning apps. Do not over-rely on phrases. Phrases are fair game, and they help you in the beginning phases of learning the language. However, you need to be able to understand why phrases work the way that they do. Thank you for watching this video, and I hope you have a great day.